What's up, everyone? This is Drew Jacoby, Chasing Excellence Only, and today I have a very special guest, good friend of mine from across North America. His name is Lucas Vision Simmons. I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit, man.
All right, what's up? So I'm Vision. Name is Lucas Simmons. Been playing Melee since 2005. That's mostly where all my experience is. So right away, that's kind of different. Been playing for such a long time and in such a early part of the era. Played Street Fighter 2, Super Turbo, Street Fighter 4. I have a little bit of experience in other games too, like League of Legends and StarCraft 2. Like all of those games I like to play like competitively to some degree. So for like Street Fighter, Melee, Tekken, it's tournaments. Been to a couple of League of Legends tournaments and never played in tournaments in StarCraft, but I played ranked, to the point where I was like, played ranked all the time. And I had a goal of trying to get to, at the time was platinum, which probably wasn't that high, but doesn't matter.
The goal's a goal, man.
Got it, and that game stressed me out, so.
So what got you into fighting games originally, just for some context?
Just ever since growing up playing games with my brother Matt.
Of course.
We played Street Fighter. The first time where it got competitive was probably like Tekken 2, Tekken 3. Like those were the games that kind of introduced us to like fighting games, playing on PlayStation. All the characters and all the moves, and like 3D fighting games were like super new to us, right? So that's what got us into it. So there was that. We also got competitive playing like Soul Calibur and Soul Blade and whatnot too. So that's kind of like where it started with me. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was a big thing for me. I didn't mention Marvel vs. Capcom 2, but I really like Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And that was the one where I was like finally exposed to like competitive play. That was the first time where I saw players like Justin Wong and like Smooth Viper, a whole bunch of MVC2 players at the time. So my brother and I would play MVC2, but our group of friends played Melee, which I hated. I hated that they all played Melee. Why couldn't they play a real fighting game? That was me. So that's kind of like how it all got started. The first tournament that I ever went to, though, was a Melee tournament.
Really?
So that's how it all got started. Just always had fighting games in my life. And eventually we found tournaments, and when I was able to drive, I was like, hey, yeah, let's go check out some of these tournaments. For Melee, turned out that we lived like an hour away from Gigabits. So
I remember Gigabits, dude. That was my first tournament. That was my first. I had a brawl event, but there was a Melee there in the other room.
Oh yeah. That was. I think I went to the first Gigabits Melee tournament. Like when they first hosted it, 2007. Back when it was way different, but I'm sure everybody probably remembers some of the old school names.
RX.
Yeah, I remember RX. I remember meeting him. He lived like, I didn't know that he played Melee until later on, and he lived like just the neighborhood next to us, so he lived really close, but that was before he got really good.
Then he just kind of dropped off because he played Brawl too.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Pretty much, yeah, so that's my experience.
So I know you from about 2015 or 16, and you hosted weekly tournaments in Melbourne. So that kind of got you some notoriety around the scene, Central Florida scene. And so what inspired the switch, the transition from consumer, competitor? I know you kept competing, but from competitor to hosting or creating, wanting to educate,
Okay, so even back like in the 2005 to 2007 era, especially like in the 2008 era of going to Melee, it was like, just to set the premise, it was always us driving to Orlando, because at the time, there was like no BCM, and there was like no, like we were the epitome of players at the time, so like there was like me and RFX and my brother Matt and whatnot, and a bunch of other like Merritt Island and Cocoa Beach guys. But we were the ones that always drive out. And I was like, wouldn't that be sick if we had tournaments here? But at the time I was like, why would they come here? We don't have any top name players. We don't really have that big of a notoriety, like in our, like why would anybody come like drive an hour down here to play us when they could just play the best players there? So eventually, back, it was like 2015, keep in mind, this was something that I always wanted to do. And finally, like the stars aligned to allow it to happen because Matt somehow came across the Cocoa Beach guys in like a Skype. I don't know how he did it. So he found Morbelix, Dirtian, Rids, and he was like, hey, yes, I found all these people that play Smash. We invited him over, and that's almost kind of how it started. Because I was like,
then it was history from there.
Yeah. And the thing is, I wasn't even thinking about tournaments. Rids, Robbie kept bugging me about hosting tournaments. Like, just like, hey, we should have a tournament. And I'm like, why? There's like 7 people here. What's the point of doing a tournament? So anyway, eventually he kept bugging me, and I was like, okay, sure, we'll do it. And it was just like a free tournament. But then more people started kind of coming over, and I was like, hey, a tournament, like a legit tournament is actually possible now. Like, I think like BCM tournament with like 12 people. Like, we found Momo, this was like, Momo had messaged me, and apparently I'd ghosted him for 3 months because he wasn't my friend, on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Getting his DMs. I finally found him, and that's when he started playing. One more player into the pool of people that kind of made this thing possible. So
No kidding.
That's what turned it into a consumer thing, I guess, not a consumer, but
no, like a leadership role. I understand.
Yeah, so it was something that I always wanted to do, was finally able to do it thanks to all the people. I had a house, I could do what I want, I went out, bought chairs and stuff to set up for it, and that's pretty much it. That's how it happened.
Fair enough. So every Monday, I try to make a video I do make a video that focuses on a topic or theme that can help people not just people, help myself and people just do a little better, be it in whatever marathon they're a part of, be it a competition, a business, a relationship. But, I have a focus on esports, obviously. And so the theme for this episode is parallels between competitive gaming and real life, because there are a lot of parallels. And in senior research, I learned how important it was to have one thing, one instance, one situation apply to multiple scenarios. So if you can use your wisdom that you get from, 15, 20 years, well, in my case, 12 years of Smash into getting good at something else or improving in some other field, like that's like our job. It's
learning how to learn.
It's like to help people. Yeah, exactly. So with that being said, I have 3 subtopics I want to talk about. The first is exactly what you just said, playing to learn versus playing to win. And when I say playing to learn versus playing to win, I mean 2 different mentalities while you're practicing or competing, really. But playing to learn obviously means you play with the intent of getting better over the long term, versus playing to win is playing to secure a win at all costs, like right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously they take different scenario or different mindsets, different conditions, but I've noticed that when you play to win, you kind of sacrifice creativity. You kind of just limit yourself. And I think that's where a lot of players go wrong. As opposed to playing to learn, you will sacrifice some of the efficiency, but in the long term, you'll learn your options, learn how people will react, blah, blah, blah. And so where is the difference most highlighted for you, if that makes sense? I'm trying to say, like, where was the most distinguishable? Was there like a time where you noticed that someone was playing to win and it held them back, or they played to learn too much and it held them back? What's your experience with those two dynamics?
So this is an example where I think Tekken 7 really shines, because I kind of feel like in Melee it's a little different. You can play to win and you can play to learn, but they're almost a little bit more closely together, because it's way harder to cheese someone out with stuff in Melee, I think, if they don't know something. If you're playing Tekken, it is way easier to lose to a worse player, because there's literally hundreds, thousands of moves. One character has from 60 to 150 moves. Each
What?
character. Yeah, that's a lot of
nuts.
moves, right? So, and when you're watching, like, I'll be watching videos, and even the top players, they say the same thing. Okay, so when you're playing Tekken, you will lose a lot, especially if you're trying to play Tekken correctly. If you're trying to play high-level Tekken in the same way that you high-level Melee, you will lose at first. So you got to get ready for that. Part of that, I think, has a lot to do with ego, so it's almost like a battle between yourself, of, hey, I got to play to learn, because it's going to carry me throughout, like there's always going to be another tournament, So if you're playing now and you're playing to learn, but you're losing, but as long as you're learning, if you lose the game, but you learn something, did you really lose? You
Exactly.
for the next time. Well, meanwhile, the other person who is just trying to grind out the win, like, don't get me wrong, there's a time to grind out.
Oh, absolutely.
Grand finals, but if you're playing Tekken using the same moves all the time, the same repetition, the same rotation of moves, you're not learning anything, rinsing and repeating, just using the same thing and hoping that it works, and hey, so yeah, it will work eventually, or it'll work initially, but what happens when that person learns, like, okay, I know how to defeat this stuff now, then what? That person has to play to learn as well and improve and adapt, or he's gonna go find another lower level player and just use the same stuff. He just wants to win. He doesn't care about improvement in the long term.
Wow, congratulations. You just described relationships. But one thing I want to mention, I noticed recently, is, in Japan, they don't pay to play Smash because it's considered gambling. And so that creates a completely different dynamic as far as the competitive scene. There's much more character diversity, much more creativity, more aggressiveness. And so that's why it's so fun to watch Japanese players play, especially in Ultimate, a slower game. America kind of just dominates Melee. So so it's interesting to see when people pay money, they'll do whatever it takes to win,
Yeah.
I don't know. Ironically, it holds them back in the long term, but.
Well, how about like I agree, but I mean, as long as you can make the distinction, like, hey, when to play to learn, play to win. If you're playing friendlies, and this is the thing that I have, like, I mean, I'm trying to learn from it. I mean, I could, like, whatever that I'm talking about, I think it's going to be good advice, but it's going to be hard to apply it. It's even hard for myself to apply it when I'm playing in a friendly. I want to win, naturally. I'm like competitive.
Oh yeah, they're not mutually exclusive.
Wants to win. It's like, that's the thing where you got to learn how to shut that switch off. Be like, hey, it's okay if he wins, because as long as I'm learning, that's okay.
Dude,
just gotta
really
fight
powerful.
yourself, I think.
That's really powerful. If you can tell yourself it's okay if my opponent wins, imagine like how much mental clutter you just get rid of.
Oh,
in the blink of an eye. You just detach yourself from the result, which is actually something useful in damn near anything from, I learned it in the context of relationships. Like, when you approach a girl, don't fear.
Oh, yeah.
Don't wonder how it'll end up, because then it'll just ruin the whole flow of the interaction.
Yeah.
Kind of the same with Smash. I was actually playing Momo at your house one time, and it was game 3. I was up 2 whole stocks, bro. And then as soon as I thought, I have this, it only takes 1 nair to win. Then I just stopped. I crashed. He won.
Oh, and yeah.
You can't do that to yourself, man. Once you get out of the zone into your head,
Yeah. I
It's
have a
kind of
friend up here.
transition. Oh,
Huh?
I was
Oh, I
gonna
was
say
gonna say.
transition to something else.
Okay, yeah, sure.
No, I want to hear your story.
Oh, it's just like another, like, kind of like an example of exactly that. I have a friend up here too who I train with, and when like I go over to her house and we'll play, and I notice that she'll play good at first, but once it get if like the closer she gets to winning, the worse she plays, to the point where like
Interesting.
sometimes I'll have to like try and give her a stock, and it's so hard to give it to her because her brain is so, like she complicates it so much. Like the closer that she gets to winning, the worse she plays. It's almost like the same thing. And I remember
Hmm.
telling her about that too. Like, hey, so I noticed one thing about you. You play strong at first, but the closer you get to winning, the more you get in your head, and then like the worse you play, and then obviously you don't win. So something that every player I think has to learn how to deal with. You got to learn how to you got to know when it's happening too. It's hard to know, like, it's kind of hard to like look at yourself, almost like from a third person to know like, okay,
No,
this,
that's exactly what it is.
yeah, like how do I fix it?
That's kind of the essence of meditation. You kind of just focus on whether it's meditating on something that already happened or meditating in the moment. You kind of just focusing on you, like
Yeah.
what's happening right now. And then if you take it with a more mindful point of view, you can really learn a lot. And so part of what's so important in that process is helping your brain work.
Yeah.
And I think especially in the gaming community, there's a lot of very sedentary lifestyle, sedentary culture, just sitting around and lacking athleticism in general.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone, obviously, but so learning how to learn is the second topic, and just learning in general. I'm not extremely educated on this, but after playing for so long, half of those years being mindlessly, I kind of started
Oh
putting the
yeah.
pieces of the puzzle together. And now I'm at the point where I can and will adapt, but it's just not fast enough for like a 2 or 3 game set.
Yeah.
Um, so how do you learn as far as getting better at Smash? How do you go about it?
So one thing, like I played a lot of Melee, and in the same way as you, just kind of mindlessly, not really thinking about getting better, just hoping to get better, not thinking about how to get better. I remember 2005 to 2007. Oh, if I could only play games with Hobo or Shizwiz, I would be this amazing player, which is not really the case. You could play them. We had Momo, we had King
Yeah.
Momo here, same thing. Like I could play him at the time and not learn a dang thing, because he just stops me, and I didn't have any way to analyze or critically think about what was happening.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like I learned, like thinking about it, like, okay, so if you were to try to learn about Melee or any game, what would the bedrock be, right? The bedrock, I would say, would probably be like the fundamentals,
Yep.
and the objective data that you have available to you. So like damage, frame data, if you have it, like in Melee or Tekken, frame data is frame data. It doesn't matter if it's Mango doing a down air or King Momo doing a down air with Falco, or the guy who goes 0 and 2 every tournament. The frame data of the down air is always going to be the same. So that's what you take a look at and like think about it, because knowing the objective data, you can know then like, okay, I got the objective data. This is the property of the moves. Put that aside, remember that, and then think, okay, so what do I have to deal with this move? Do I have anything? Do I got to use movement? Do I have a move that has a better hitbox range than Falco down air? Stuff like that. So I think that would give you a starting point to kind of start dissecting these little things that happen that basically determine a game. So
Yeah.
that's where I would say, like, and I think also like we might get into it later, but plateaus, you know, like imagine people playing mindlessly and they have decent fundamentals and then they plateau. And they're like, well, I can't get any better. Why am I not getting better? So one thing I made a post on Facebook about this. Like, imagine you're building this road and you're building and you're building and you're building, right? And you look back at the road and you see a whole bunch of potholes. And these potholes were not originally there when you were playing the first time, but you would never know that these potholes existed if you didn't look back to see. So these are obviously flaws in your understanding of the game and whatever, like little techniques that you're not using, you know, like the meta right now for Melee, you know, crouch canceling or L canceling, stuff like that, you know, stuff that is objectively there. But if you don't know that it's there, it's obviously going to hinder your gameplay because you're at a disadvantage. And those are just like the big, those are just like really normal examples. You know, there's probably more in-depth stuff that you could look for and find if you go back and look. You know, like I will use myself as an example. I've always sucked at using crouch canceling. You know, I'm trying to learn how to shield drop now. So that would be me trying to fill in the potholes as best as I can, because that's only going to improve my gameplay and make me better. Like, hey, so you lose to this player all the time, but now imagine playing this player in the next tournament, but now look at all the tools you have now that you didn't have before. That's what going back and looking at all this stuff like frame data and whatever little techniques you can use that you weren't using before.
Exactly. That's true. And to add to that, you know, fundamentals are obviously the core of any game or competition, but even before that, the competition starts before you even touch the controller. And I mean, like I said before, like, how do you live your life? Like, what kind of energy are you bringing? Like, how are you talking to yourself? You know, how are you thinking about the set, your skill or lack of? Like, again, like playing to learn versus win, like what's your goals? And so, like I've mentioned in a prior episode, I, you know, see a lot of top players over the years, you know, they're so good that it doesn't even matter, but they show up, you know, late, hungover, or this and that, got 2 hours of sleep, didn't eat breakfast. I'm like, dude, imagine where you would be if you tried, you know, if you had some kind of consistency. And from there, you just, I don't know, just find the diet and exercise program that you like. You know, it has to be enjoyable on some level.
Oh yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, I'm just gonna jump in like real quick. Like, I think also, like, you know, when you're playing Melee or any competitive game, a lot of people also friends and fun, you know, not just winning, you know. So I think that's where they get meshed together. So of course you're gonna have people that go out and drink and they get hungover and they come and play the next day, because it's not, I think to some degree, it's not just about the winning. It's about, hey, I have friends that I don't see often, you know.
Dude, of course, I know that. But then it comes down to what your priority is, and then what your priority is will determine how things go.
Yeah.
And you have only yourself to blame for that.
Yep.
But it's also about keeping like a promise to yourself. You know what I mean? And whether it's a routine before competition, before in the morning or whatever, like how you practice, how you warm up should be how you compete.
Yes.
It's keeping the same state. And so, do you have any rituals before your events, before you compete, or
so
even host tournaments?
What's up?
Or maybe even anything you do in particular before you hosted a
tournament? Not before hosting, not really. I mean,
yeah. Can only do so much.
Like, what's up?
I said you can only do so much for that before people get there.
Yeah. Well, like the first time that I hosted the first BCM tournament I hosted, when it came time for me to announce, like, hey, the tournament's starting, I legit had a panic attack.
No.
Like, so excited. Jeez. And, you know, I had to, like, you know, I felt nauseous and stuff, and I had to, like, literally go out of my house and take a walk to calm down to come back just to be able to host this thing. But I never had that problem afterwards. But as far as like playing competitively, I need to take some advice and do that stuff because I don't um, adhere to a lot of the stuff that would make me play better. Like I don't eat a good breakfast. I drink coffee, which makes me jittery. I actually do stuff that probably makes me play a lot worse. So the advice is there, but the thing is, like, just like you said, hey, what matters more, your coffee in the morning or winning, playing decent at the tournament,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. That, but there, I would say that I did practice, like there was a time when I moved up here, I took a page out of Momo's book. I remember going to Momo's place one time, and to my surprise, he had a list of players that he wanted to beat. And my name was on the list, and of course, and it was scratched off by this point too. He scratched the name off, but I think Momo is like a super good example of what hard work and dedication can do. So I took a page out of his book. I took the PR list from the people up here at the time, and I was like, I'm going to do exactly what Momo did. I'm going to stick a line through them, and every time I beat one. And this was at a time too where I was practicing to beat these guys. And of course, I put the work in. It happened. I was scratching names off the list, And I was like, oh man, that's actually really great. It's nice to do work and have yourself rewarded, to know that you're not just wasting your time.
And then that satisfaction of crossing their name off. Nothing like it.
I mean, so I had marginal success. I would stop eventually, due to like personal reasons, I stopped going to tournaments for a long while and stopped practicing. But that's the takeaway from the story, because it's relevant.
Of course. So, I'm kind of a shadow now. But let's transition to in the game itself. And obviously every fighting game is a little bit different, but they have similarities. So let's try to keep it like that. But as far as learning, like you said, it's hard to, especially in Melee, because in Melee it's very technically taxing, it's so much movement, and it hardly even gives the lower level players time to think, because they're thinking about, how do I just move? How do I exist?
Yeah.
So it takes like a certain threshold or like a certain skill to reach the threshold where you can think and play at the same time.
Yeah.
But, once my brain was clear, more or less, I would be playing and just noticing more between matches. And, I was playing online, so I was at my house and able to write things down. So I would just write down things I remembered about certain matchups or players or whatever, and then keep it in mind. And odds are they would do it again.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't enough to like completely change how I play, but it's enough to not let people get away with the same BS every time.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I just like to look for what people did in like panic situations, when they're off the stage. How did they go higher or lower? Are they playing aggressively, fast, slow? Are they tense? Basically just trying to get a read on the situation while not giving up my own game plan. So what kind of things do you look for in a match?
So this is probably where I kind of struggle a little bit, is being able to look at and remember all of the options that they're using, like I can remember certain situations pretty well if it's like kind of like obvious, but more subtle stuff, I can't pick up onto it as much. So like a real to thing is like, well, hey, I'm ledge guarding, it'll be like at a time where the opponent's back is to the ledge, to the ledge, and then you predict a roll, right, and then punish them. That's like a very obvious one where you can say, his natural instinct is to get away from the wall or the ledge, so it's a little bit easier to think about that, but it's a little bit harder in my opinion to kind of pick out patterns where like, okay, well, he always does this thing from he'll drop to the platform and shoot a laser and then he'll come in with a downer. That's like a little as Falco. So that's like something that is a little bit more like nuanced. It's a little bit more subtle, because he's not always on a platform, and the reasons why he will be put onto a platform will differ. Sometimes he jumps onto it. Sometimes he might recover onto it. Sometimes you knock him up and he lands on it, so like all these different things kind of make it almost kind of muddy the water in this little situation. He might drop, shoot a laser, and then down air you.
That's a good way to put it. Mud in the water.
What's that?
Yeah. You said mud in the water, right?
Oh, muddy the water. Yeah, kind of like, if you're trying to find this pattern, but look at all this stuff that almost kind of clouds it, so it makes it makes it see. Because that's one thing that I kind of fall for sometimes, and I'm trying to work on that. Fighting Falcos, where they fall to the ledge, or they'll be on the platform, they fall, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get him when he falls. But he doesn't fall. He falls and shoots a laser, and now I'm stuck in hit stun, and then he comes in, It's like, just like a situation. Huh?
I was going to say, that's something I was going to say. Hit stun of the laser in that situation particularly, that just like stops the whole game for a second.
Yeah, your brain is like, I want to grab you. And then you're hit, and you're like, oh, wait, I wasn't expecting that at all. But it was kind of like, that's just like one example, I think, of trying to pick apart a pattern where the pattern isn't as obvious as, hey, get up, roll, or get up, spot dodge,
Yeah, so it's more of a series of actions than a single individual thing. Makes sense. Okay. And so
what was it we were talking about? Like, how do we figure stuff about, like, I think finding stuff about that, like trying to figure out patterns or whatever, that's probably where I would imagine probably looking at matches over and over again might help, because you're not looking from it from a player standpoint now. You're looking at it from, hey, it's already happened. You can look at it a little bit more objectively, Yep. So
exactly. I've watched Hunter x Hunter 5 times completely, and every time I've noticed something new. Every single time. And so that's an 148 episode thing, but imagine if you put that into like 7 minutes,
Yeah, exactly. Like, imagine all the stuff that you're not going to see, or it'll just go right by. You don't even get it.
But I mean, to get to the top, you have to be obsessive. Basically, it has to be like a central focus of your life, because there's just so much competition that's growing every day. And so,
yeah, I think, because that's like one thing where you're talking about like different, like how is gaming, competitive gaming related to life? And sometimes you can kind of compare it to like maybe something like learning an instrument, but this is one case where you are literally competing with somebody else. So it makes it a little bit different from learning, trying to play guitar, where you're not competing, versus somebody who's actually trying to deceive you to some degree, because they don't, they're trying to win. So they will deceive you. They don't want you to see their patterns, but so to find the patterns anyway. You don't have that in a lot of stuff, like stuff where, like, I guess like playing a guitar or some instrument's probably like the best example I can think of right now. Yeah.
And there's been some cases, very few, but some cases where the dynamic of the match, so like let's say like I would keep winning, it would actually like make them resentful or frustrated at me, like as a character, as if I'm like attacking their character. I mean, like their internal character, not their.
Oh yeah, that's that ego.
Yeah,
and that's that ego, and I
think that also. Over it.
What's up?
I don't want to lose friends over Smash, but I guess it really shows how people handle pressure.
Yeah. Well, also, like, imagine, that's one thing. I feel like the more angry you are, the harder it is to learn. Like, there is a guy in BCM. I don't know if I should name him. I mean, it's not a bad story.
No.
But I won't mention him. But I remember him talking to him, and he admitted to me that it's hard for him to get better. And I remember trying to talk to him, and one thing I found out he told me was that he gets mad at himself a lot when playing. And I feel like if you're mad, especially if you're mad at yourself, but even if you're mad at your opponent or whatever, if you're mad, it's harder to learn. It's like your ability to problem solve goes away when you're angry. That's that part.
Oh, yeah.
That's that part where I guess like your animal brain kind of takes over and just starts trying to work on instinct rather than problem solving. So it's like if you got to realize like, hey, if you're getting mad, you need to calm down. Because you're making it harder for yourself. Like in every sport, I think.
True.
You're not learning. If you're angry, you're probably playing more predictably. You're not learning, and if you're angry, you're also probably not thinking as much.
You're on edge,
like
more reactive.
Yeah, like fighting games are like a thinking man's game, So
it's true. That's what I've actually been thinking. I'm more competitive than I give myself credit for, and so I find myself like competitive and like Mario Party and this and that. It's just like random things that like children's games or whatever. So I was thinking like you say what would you say, smart man's game or something, and I thought of chess. So have you played chess? Because it's really interesting.
I know how to play chess. I have not. I know that it kind of popped up recently, but I haven't played any chess.
It's like purely mind game.
Yeah.
Haven't gotten too into it, but I feel like if you get good at chess, you can get really good at reading people. But that's just just an idea.
Because in chess, you're probably like thinking. You're trying to think, right? You're thinking, but you're thinking 2 turns, 3 turns, maybe 4 turns ahead, right? Is that the case? I'm not a chess expert, but I would imagine that's how it is.
Actually, my cousin's like 16. He's like playing grandmasters already. It's crazy. I don't know the exact ranking, but he's really good. But I guess it just depends on how good and experienced you are, like anything else. So the third subtopic I want to talk about was emotions, because as we were discussing before, they have a huge impact on not only your tournament scene, or not only a tournament, but the scene, if it's an issue, and your life. It obviously leaks elsewhere. So with that, we have nerves, fear or anxiety. We have expectations, self-talk. There's a lot of different aspects to emotions and that internal dialogue. So first, expectations. One of those classic cliche like self-help quotes is, what you get out of life, what you put, like energetically, you get out of life what you put in. So although it's like easier said than done, right? It's true to a degree, because if you tell yourself, if you expect to lose, then your brain's like, whether you realize it or not, looking for little ways to lose. You know what I mean? It's like a self-sabotage. If you don't believe you're worthy of winning, like you're gonna do what you can to not win, and that sucks because you're paying to win. So I've always at least tried to go in with it at least neutral. I don't want to say I'm gonna win everything, because that turns into arrogance. But I try to like say, you know what, we're all in the same starting field. We both start with 4 stocks in Melee, 4 stocks, 0%, and that's that. So expectations, if you get in your own head, like I said before, it's like not fun. So tell me about a time where your expectations influence your results and you realized it.
Well, that was probably I got like good examples and bad examples, so like you're saying,
Well, either way, because it works both ways for sure.
Yeah, like up here practicing, and then kind of like being vindicated, because you practice, and you practice, but you still might not win, which of course will then tell you, you might you might think, well, I practiced for nothing. I practiced and I still didn't.
Mhm.
I wasted my time. So that might bring in the fear part. Like I'm afraid of losing this investment I put in so much work already. I'm afraid of it being a waste of time. You know, so you got that to deal with, and but luckily for me this time, like in this instance, the practice paid off. I got results. I got the results that I wanted. I also had times though, especially not even a long time ago, like I still have this creeping thought of the opposite end of it. Oh, well, I'm probably going to lose this fight, so it's okay. Is it ever okay to think that? I mean, like if you're trying to win and you're trying to play as well as you can, that's probably not a good thought, but that's one that always comes up, in Melee. Not so much in Tekken. In Tekken, I feel like I can beat anybody. I might not beat them, but I don't have this thing where I'm like, well, I can't beat this person. It's impossible. In Melee, that's more of a common thought, when I'm playing somebody for some reason.
Mhm.
And of course, as we're saying, that's not a good mentality to have. Because you said you're already, you can lose the game before you even pick up the controller, as you said, and that's what happens. I would say when I have that thought where I'm like, okay, well, I'm fighting this good player and I'm probably not going to win, you know? So,
Well,
I guess there's probably a good way to think about it because, yeah, you want to build yourself up, but also you're in reality and maybe statistically speaking, you might not win. This person is number one on the seed, but you probably got to change your perspective, and saying, instead of saying, I'm never going to win, or to maybe I'm going to do my best, maybe something like that. Maybe that's what
sounds
shift.
very anime.
I'm like,
Let's
I've picked it out, but I'm not really like, I still need to figure out like, okay, well, how can I turn this into a positive thing, instead of,
on that note, I don't like, I'm a pretty positive guy, and
yeah, that's where like we could take one from your book. You probably have better experience
at least
with
I
having a
like,
mentality that's good for playing,
yes, but that laxness comes with a curse of laziness. So, but that's not the point. I lost my train of thought.
We were talking about having the mentality of like where you
Oh,
might be fighting a good player. So it's like, well, is it right
yes.
to just accept the loss, or is it that, or what's like a healthy balance of saying this player's really good, but I'm gonna beat him versus this person's really good, I can't beat him.
So, like I said, I think I'm pretty positive, but I always like to make it clear that if you're just positive all the time, it's delusional, and
Mm-hmm.
that can put you down a bad path. And so, it's more so being open. I think being open to failure, not expecting yourself to just do bad because that's how things were, and that's how
Mm-hmm.
things will be. Because look at Momo, like perfect example. He just towered through everyone when the time came, slowly but surely he chipped away at that list. And I'm sure there was a point where he said, oh, I'm never going to beat Vision, like the first time
Oh
he
yeah.
probably wrecked his everything. And as I did many times, dude, many times I beat Momo. And then
Mm-hmm.
he got closer and closer and closer. So
Yep.
he didn't do that from telling himself it's not possible, even though
Yeah.
there's a big gap. Um, I would say openness, like detaching yourself from the result, um, knowing that, like you said, if you fail, and you learn something, is it really failure?
Mm-hmm.
Like you'll take it to next step of the process, be that hitting the lab or practicing with your friends or the next tournament or whatever. Hopefully all three.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Let's see. So I am a big writer. I've been a writer at heart since I was a kid. And so I'm just now learning how valuable it could end up being to just either get things that you had on your mind and didn't even know it off of your mind. It's like a purge of the brain. Or
Yeah.
it can also help you sort out your thoughts clearly and succinctly, line by line. at the stroke of your own hand, no one else's. So I've even like went and just sat in my car before tournaments and just wrote, like, what do I expect? What do I want from this? Who could I be playing that I usually play? What could I do? At least, what do I know about certain matchups that I can keep in mind, so I don't have to relearn it as I'm playing it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's example what's called priming. You are more or less conditioning your mind what to expect and getting it into a certain state. I don't know if you'd heard of Tony Robbins. He's a pretty famous self-help guru, author, entrepreneur, investor, blah, blah, blah. But he talks about priming in the sense of before going on stage, he'll like do a certain routine or like yell really loud or, you know, just do something like crazy, like, or like jumping in a cold pool or cold shower. I mean,
Yeah.
Just different things to like get your mind in that state. And so I guess we already talked about preparation, but writing, just for everyone listening, writing is a great way to really learn about yourself. And I know that sounds corny, but you don't have to be a writer to pick up a piece of paper and write down what you're feeling. Like one time I wrote a note to my grandmother for her birthday, and it started with, "Dear Grandma, I don't know what I'm going to say before I started this." And this then just went on, and it was like the nicest thing. She said it was the nicest thing I've ever written for her. So that's not the point. The point is you have so much in you that no one can take away, but you have the responsibility to give, if that makes sense. It doesn't even have to be, doesn't even have to be written. Any way that like helps you organize your thoughts, and I think it can really help competitors a lot.
Yeah, can I just like jump in real quick? Like you said,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You said something about like I don't know. This is something that I can really relate to, because you said you don't have to be a writer to write, and I kind of feel like I'm on the same wavelength where I might use like philosophy, kind of, you know, like I used to get into like a whole bunch of debates about stuff, and I was basically conditioning my mind to think in a certain way. And I was like, well, what if I put this towards fighting games, right? So that's what I did, and I would say the same thing. You don't have to be a philosopher to philosophize about the stuff. You know, you don't have to go to school, you know. So, I mean, and that's kind of like how I started like trying to build my own bedrock and basically coming up with my own stuff to better myself, you know. And maybe some of it will be really successful or applicable. Maybe some of it is garbage, you know. I don't know. But I would say like, hey, maybe everybody has their own thing to kind of, I guess, like do what you said, like, get it off of their chest, you know, like I guess that's how I do it. Philosophizing, thinking about it, and then trying to help people, you know, like making my Tekken videos or jumping in here with you, you know, talking about it. It feels really good. It feels great to help people and talk about it and get it off of my brain, you know. And also another thing, you were talking about writing. Maybe it's not writing, but like taking notes too. I did the same thing. Like, well, what did you say was priming? Where
I mean,
like
priming. I meant priming your state by doing certain things. So it's more.
Okay.
Yeah, but yes,
Okay.
but at the same time, yes.
Okay, like I don't have like stuff that I did, you know, like before a game, but I started thinking ahead and like for Tekken, or actually for both Tekken and Melee. For Tekken, I have a little notebook app in my phone, and I have matchup stuff that I want to be able to not have to think about in the game. You know, I want to know like, hey, I already know this information. I'm going to use it to win instead of like you said, learning while you're playing. You know, learning the you already know. Like, why would you do that? Same thing with Melee. I made little sticky notes on my computer, and this mostly had to do with like objective data on FD, up throw, up smash. At what percent does it kill Falco? And he smashed a Yaya out of it. That's one thing that led to my victory over one of the players on that list. I got him to the exact percent, and he didn't smash the Yaya. he died. I didn't even have to think about it. I was like, I know that notepad because I went over it. I did my homework. So unless he smashed DIs it, but he didn't, he died. And that, was one of the little pieces of the puzzle that helped me, achieve the
That's great.
like a short-term goal,
Honestly, that might be a puzzle piece that I'm missing, my friend.
Yeah.
I've always chose to ignore the nitty gritty side of Smash, like the frame data, +2 on shield, -1, like all that fancy
Oh,
mumbo
yeah.
jumbo. I, just played the game, but I'm coming
Yeah.
to learn that I should learn basic interactions like that. Like
Yeah.
it can make a difference. Like
Yeah,
you
the
just
good thing about
described.
with Melee, like I'm with you. The frame data seems so different because it's a lot more confusing. In Tekken, it's a lot more streamlined. Everybody has the same 10 frame move, and it's a lot easy. It's way easier to learn frame data in Tekken. So I learned it in Tekken, and now I'm trying to apply it in Melee. Like, okay, I know what frame data is. I know what this means. I know what that means. So it makes it a little bit easier, but I still think Melee's frame data is a little bit harder because you just
Oh
have
yeah,
different
it's
variables.
so
Like
specific.
like the shield, you have like how far away from the shield, which is going to affect the frame data. You have how deep on the shield, as opposed to like on hitting somebody from the air on the top of the shield and deep in the shield. You have all kinds of like different variables that can change the frame data. You don't have that in Tekken, so it makes it way easier.
Wow, didn't even realize that. So separately from self-talk, I want to mention the new term. It's called self-efficacy. Have you heard that?
No.
So I did my whole senior research around self-efficacy because I wanted to choose a research topic that, I have some level of experience in or knowledge or awareness of, and that can actually help other people. And so I picked self-efficacy with competition in mind because self-efficacy itself is the degree to which you think you are capable of something. And so it's like when you come up to a challenge, there's basically two options: avoid it or conquer it. Do you have a fixed mindset where you believe, oh, woe is me, this is a predetermined result and I can't do anything about it? Or do you look for ways to conquer it? So it's a growth mindset. Look for ways to grow, overcome, best yourself. And so self-efficacy, again, your belief in your own ability to get something done. So there's self-efficacy for, in general, academic, social efficacy, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of related to self-esteem, but also not, because self-esteem is your overall view of yourself. It's almost like you're judging yourself, but self-efficacy is belief in your ability. And after doing a lot of research on it, I noticed it's correlated with so many different factors. Like resilience, one of them. Like people who believe they're capable of more are literally their brains are more able to handle tough situations.
Okay.
And once I really that really clicked, it was like, wow, like people in general need to like be the CEO of their own brain. You know what I mean? They need to make their own decisions and decide how they want to feel before they feel it. Like feel it before you feel it type thing. And so as far as your own capabilities, what is something that, besides just like losing, what is something that has blocked your self-efficacy, aka what has made you have less faith in yourself, and what's something that has more or less restored faith in yourself or increased it?
It's gonna be hard to think of a specific example, I guess. something like made me lose.
I have another way to frame it.
What's that?
I have another way to frame it, if that would help.
Yeah, go ahead.
what have you seen in other people?
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen people say or do about themselves that affects their performance?
Oh man. Hmm.
Going for those good questions, bro.
Oh yeah, no, that's a tough one. Okay, so I know one. Okay, here's one. It has to do with me, I think. Even and it was back in 2006, I remember playing, and I think it goes. This one kind of has a lot to do with confidence, which I think kind of like you said, you
Yep.
kind of put them in together. And I remember I was playing in 2006 MLG, and I was against a puff guy, and he just disrespected me to the point where he was like talking crap to me and kind of like almost like laughing at me while I was playing, and that
Wow.
like that really affected my ability to even do anything. I was like I actually felt water in my eyes. That's how upset I was, because this
Man.
guy was talking smack and there was nothing that I could do, and it just made me play even worse. So,
Mm-hmm.
and so he beat me obviously, and I was like so upset. Like I really wanted to cry. I,
Yeah.
I've never even mentioned that before, but like yeah, there was one game where I actually wanted to just cry, because I felt it in my eyes. And right after I lost to this guy, I had to play another match in losers, and it was against a guy named Green Mario. I don't know if you've ever heard of Green Mario.
Yeah.
South
I've
Florida.
heard the
Okay,
name.
so and he had like his squad behind him, either his squad or a bunch of fans.
Oh no.
Having to play this guy, now there's a crowd behind me. I just got freaking humiliated by this guy, and like talking about the self-efficacy, I feel like that really had an effect on my ability to even do anything the next match. Like I was
Yeah.
not obviously I was so emotional I wouldn't have been able to set aside like, okay, I lost to this guy, it sucked. I'll play my next game. Like no, like I literally carried the burden from that game right into the next game.
Okay, let me interrupt that really quickly.
What's up?
So let me interrupt you. And we can't control our emotions, but we can control how we react to them.
Yeah.
So let's say you played again and you got more flustered than you expected, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not the exact same, but similar. What would you do differently between matches now that you're looking back?
Oh, okay.
This
So,
connects priming, this connects expectations, physiology.
oh,
Let's hear it.
all right. So here's another example. Actually, it's perfect because this is the thing that I did differently this time. This time it's Tekken 7 I'm playing. And this time I have a huge crowd behind me. Tons of people. Like it wasn't even like it was like, it wasn't even like a placement match, It was just another match in the tournament. And I
Been
had
there, done that.
behind me getting loud, and the guy that I was playing, like, I moved up here. I don't have like a crew up here. This guy had his crew all getting loud for him. The whole crowd is behind me. Like I felt like I should have been able to beat this guy. Like it could have gone either way. But anyway, so the crowd's getting loud. He beats me the first game, and the crowd's getting loud. It's getting hype for him. And I took a second to like calm down. Like I had time to select my stage, and I had time to select a character, or vice versa. I flipped it. I even heard one guy who was like, "You got to select a stage, man." Like he was just watching. He was just saying like he probably saw that I was really nervous, but all of that stuff was like going in my mind, and I was like, okay, I need to shut this out. So even though he was like, "You got to pick a stage," I like blocked it out, and I just sat there, closed my eyes, and did some breathing a little bit because I was like, I know that I can play better than this. So I did that and won the next game, right? So
Wow.
an instance where I had the same pressure on me, but I was able to kind of deflect it. I still lost the set, unfortunately, but that was just mostly to just answer your question. That was, I was able to kind of calm myself and come back and play the way that I wanted to play. So
So
I won that game, and then I think I kind of fell back into anxiety mode. I wasn't
that's
able
what I
to
was gonna
keep
ask.
I wasn't able to keep that mentality. But the fact was, I was able to get there in the first place, which
Yep.
is a positive step, right? So
Absolutely, dude.
answered the question.
Oh yeah.
of
Yeah. I mean, you
self-efficacy.
handled that like couldn't have handled it better myself. You know,
Yeah.
that's how it's done, dude. But like you said, the fact that you even got there shows that you're capable of doing it, which
Mhm.
means in your brain, you know that if that like something like that happens again, like you know what works. And it's
Yeah.
not a guaranteed win, but like you said, I know I can play better than that. Just
Yeah.
telling yourself that,
Yeah,
it's
I
like
told
give
myself
yourself
that and it
permission.
worked. So it was really good. Yeah.
And then maybe, just maybe, after that game, you got comfortable. And then maybe he caught up or something. But I was curious whether or
Yeah.
not you would have maintained the momentum or fell back. So it's interesting.
Oh, yeah. Well, with that game, we were both definitely nervous. So this game, it went down to the last round, last hit. It literally came at the point, to the point where, what decided the winner or the loser. It was really almost like a flip of the coin toss. That's how close it was, you know? So like I did something and I was like, okay, if I do this move, I'm basically putting my bank on this move. And if this move hits him, I win. He chose the option that beats the move that I threw out. So he chose the right option and I lost. He won. But that was like just like down to the last decision, the last very decision where
Okay.
yeah. So that's what happened there. That's how it went. And of course, those games are like the hardest to lose too, having it so close yet so far. But
That's true, man. And as far as I can remember, most of our sets between me and you go that way.
I
It's
love our
usually
sets.
me
Our sets
too.
are always fun. You're like the only guy that I would like say, "Hey, Drew, let's do a $20 money match." And actually do it. I'm like, okay, now maybe five, but I don't know. Because I feel like when we play, the games are always so fun. So I don't know. I feel like I don't know. It's just weird
I'm ready for the rematch, bro.
energy where I'm like, okay, I don't feel insulted or mad if I lose. I'm like, hey, okay, I lost to Drew. I'll get him next time. So
Yeah. I mean, that's like the most healthy form of competition, like
yeah.
rivalry.
Yeah, I feel like it's a really friendly rivalry.
Oh yeah. I mean, we saw each other every week. What choice do we have?
Yeah, yeah. Well, now it's only whenever I visit. So
Hey, dude, it's been so long. But this has been a great session, my dude. This has been a great conversation.
oh
And
yeah, hope people can like watch it and like learn. So and also this will be like a little motivation. Like I've wanted to do my own thing. With like making videos of this topic. Like the topic that we're doing right now. Just maybe like a different format. Like in the form of
yeah,
a video. But
you
anyway, yeah.
should, man. I
All
should totally
that
support that.
information. Yeah.
You should do it whatever format you want, whatever like would help you communicate it best, and then like I'll just do it. You know what I mean? Like, look at
Oh
me.
yeah.
I'm just like I don't have any
Yes.
professional setup. I'm just running it.
Yeah, I would say like yeah, it's like a motivation to see you doing it. I'm like, hey, you got to go out there and grab it. It's
Sure, I appreciate that, man.
definitely like a motivation to seeing other people doing stuff, and then makes you want to be like, okay, I got to do my stuff because they're doing stuff, they're getting stuff done. You
If
know,
they can do it,
just
shoot,
by thinking about it, which is kind of my problem. So,
man. Well, thanks for taking the time out, man.
all
And
right, thanks, Drew. Thanks for having me on.
it has been great. And we're gonna dive into another topic very soon. I can tell.
All right, sounds great.
All right, brother. You enjoy your night.
All right, see you.
Later.